Welcome, everyone, to our week 5 of mindfulness strategies for stress. And today we're going to cover a fair amount of ground with really what can we do to better integrate our mindful awareness throughout the day. We've talked about informal and formal strategies, and hopefully you've started to do some of those, and I'll check in with you in a bit. But this is really focused on intentionally finding those break points, transition points. Might be before you actually start work, or it might be at a lunch break or a coffee break, or after work, but also during work. What can we do during work? Brief, quick little practices that can really just help us and support the whole habit, and which, of course, I think will help with the stress of the workday. The second part, we're going to talk a little bit about mindful communication and how we can really use mindful listening as a way to better connect with colleagues, but also with everyone in our lives. So let's start off with a quick pause, kind of a break. I have equanimity up here. Equanimity, we kind of talked about last week as being sort of an even-mindedness. But let's just kind of start with checking in with ourselves. And you can find a comfortable position. You can close your eyes if you like. This will just be a couple of minutes, just a quick practice. And you might just start by kind of asking yourself, how am I doing today? This is, if you recall, the beginning of the 3-minute breathing space. So just really, how am I doing? How am I really doing today? That might include being aware of how the body is as you settle, as you come into presence, just noticing how the body feels. And it also may entail checking in with thoughts, whatever thoughts are here. There may be a lot of thoughts. As I mentioned, today's election day, and there's a lot going on in the world around us. And that also may be connected with what emotions are present. So just doing that check-in. Body, sensations in the body. How's the body doing? What's the state of the mind? And what's the state of your mood, your emotions? Just noticing. And we try to notice with a little bit of that non-judgmental presence so that we don't judge what we're noticing. We're not trying to fix anything. So just notice. And then we'll just simply do a little bit of breathing. So breathing in, maybe lengthening the in-breath, and breathing out long and slow. Do that a couple, 2-3 times to just center us and ground us in and out. And as you do that, especially as you breathe out, let the body settle, feel the weight of the body. So bring your awareness into the body. Let the body be also anchored and grounded. And just rest. Let the mind rest. Let the body rest. Let everything just rest. Just give yourself permission to just be here. Put everything else aside. Just be present as best you can. And of course, whenever you get distracted, just come back. And that's sort of the basic practice. Come back to the breath or the body. And with that, just checking in with yourself again, just maybe noticing, does that help to center a bit? Or does it help to focus a bit? Does it help to bring our awareness into the present moment? Just notice what that's like. If it didn't, that's fine. I'm just going to notice how that worked or didn't work. All right, so that was our quick practice to get started, and want to check in with you and see how it's going. Last week we talked about learning to surf, riding the waves of our emotional life and things that are going on. And so there was the emotion meditation, or the equanimity. I think there was a link for equanimity. We didn't actually do the Eye of the Hurricane meditation, but it is on that meditation page. It's a really good one, I think, because it's the whole idea of even in the midst of a hurricane where there's lots of course, rain and winds and even kind of scary stuff going on around us, there's that calm eye that we can find refuge in. And there is an actual meditation, so you might check that out. So anybody have any feedback or comments about how your week's practice went? Excuse me. And please feel free to use the chat, or if you'd like to speak up, if that's easier, whatever you prefer. How did it go last week, and how's your practice going?
But this is Doris. I'll talk since it's kind of a small group today.
Thanks.
I found, I don't know if this relates to the surfing one or not, because I really didn't practice that, but I remembered a little bit from last week.
Okay.
So I think that, or something we learned last week, helped me to try to differentiate the unpleasant events that happen and what I can and cannot do to help or alleviate them if they're not really pertaining to me, but they are in a roundabout way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Would that be the surf?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's partly surfing. That's partly not. Yes, for sure. It sounds like you're learning to not react with that sort of knee-jerk reaction that you're learning to step back from whatever it is, and just that space in between stimulus and response. But also the distinction, and see, I think this is where the insight comes in, the distinction that, oh, that maybe I don't have to be worried about that or stressed about that. Maybe this doesn't really pertain to me, or maybe I have no control over that. And so why fret over it?
Yeah, it's definitely the control part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm learning to say, okay, well, this stressed me out a little bit, but I can't control what's going on with other people. I can be
Yeah.
there to support them, but it's not
Yeah.
my unpleasant event to fix.
Good. Yeah. I think that's a very key strategy there. So yeah, it's sort of the serenity prayer,
Mm.
that the knowing, accepting what we can't change, the knowing what we can change, but the wisdom is to know the difference.
Right.
Right, and that's the key thing. That's great. Thanks, Doris. Anybody else have any insights or comments on how it's going or questions? All right. Well, so we did talk about learning to surf last week, and kind of managing our emotional lives, and also the thoughts that come up and that fuel those sometimes. So as I mentioned, today we're going to talk about integrating into our daily work life, but also we're going to talk about mindful communication. So this quote from the Buddha, if you know something hurtful and not true, don't say it. If you know something hurtful and true, don't say it. If you know something helpful but not true, don't say it. If you know something helpful and true, find the right time to say it. So again, this is not a course in Buddhism, but I just think that says a lot about mindful communication. And there's another kind of, later on, I'll have kind of a shorter synopsis of that. But it is really just a very, I think, good guidance as to, especially these days, there's so much division in our country, and there's so much going on in our world around us, and there's a lot of stress. And so, sometimes things come out of our mouth before we even realize it. And this is all part of just being aware of that too, being aware of what you want to say, when you want to say it, and just kind of pausing to ask ourselves, is this helpful or hurtful? Is this true or not? Um, and, if we all did that, especially in the political arena, things would be a lot different, I think. So, but again, turning to the idea of taking breaks for ourselves and being kind to ourselves. This is from Dr. Joyce Brothers. No matter how much pressure you feel at work, if you could find ways to relax for at least 5 minutes every hour, you'd actually be more productive. And there's actual studies that really show this, that when we do take breaks, when we do take time for ourselves, when we kind of try to slow down and interrupt all the multitasking that we do, we actually are more productive. Now, I think in healthcare, depending on what your role is, it's pretty hard to do that sometimes, but the idea is trying to find some time to take breaks. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and to take breaks in a way that is not when it's too late. I think that's what a lot of us do. We wait until we're feeling so kind of burnt out. That's when we go, oh, finally, well, I'm going to either wait till the end of the day or wait until whatever to take that break. But I'm going to make some suggestions in a few minutes about taking breaks before that happens. So I love Dilbert. Dilbert's this cartoon. So you can see this talks a little bit about communicating in today's world with all the digital distractions that we have. So studies say people are losing their ability to focus. This is Dilbert talking to his coworker because of all the digital distractions. And coworker goes, "Sorry, what?" Because he's distracted by something going on with his phone. Then Dilbert gets a beep. Hold on. And the other guy finally says, "What were you saying?" And Dilbert, I don't know, probably wasn't important. So, because he's looking at his own phone. And we've all seen this. We've seen people walking down the street looking at their phones. We've seen people, in the midst of the workday, we've seen it just gets us out of sync to what we can do and how we can connect with other people. So being mindful of how we react to those digital distractions is really important. But again, this quote, which I think I showed at the beginning, one of the first classes, to experience peace does not mean that your life is always blissful, but it means you're capable of tapping into a blissful state of mind amidst the normal chaos of a hectic life. So to me, what this is saying in today's lesson is that we do have some control over this. It does help to practice this, and it helps us condition our mind and our body to be able to relax and find that peaceful place upon command. But it also means that we have a choice. We don't have to react, kind of what you were saying. We don't have to react to every little ping or notification or trigger, and we can control that. So it's kind of also like, I don't have a slide on this, but with, I don't know about you, but I'll be very happy when this election is over, because there's so much going on, and there's so many opinions, and there's so much, more than ever in the media, and you can't avoid it. So, but we can control and regulate the intake, right? So we don't have to. I know we have these phones; they're always with us. They're here all the time, but we can control and regulate the amount that we take in and the times that we take it in, and notice when is it really helpful you to get that information at a particular time, or is it triggering you and making you more stressed out? That's one thing I've noticed for myself, is that if I look, well, at particular times of the day, like the end of the day, for example, I really try to avoid looking at the news and any kind of news, so especially political news, but just noticing, oh, I really want to know that thing that came across my feed. But at the same time, if I look into that, it's triggering and it's stressful and it gets me emotional. So we can learn to be mindful about when we take all that in. So getting into sort of a little more of the nitty-gritty of ways that we can integrate all these practices into our regular day. So mindful driving, there's actual meditation for this, not like your typical close your eyes, obviously, type meditation. But we can learn to mindfully drive and just really pay attention to all of the things right from the moment we get into the car, what it feels like sitting down, what it feels like putting the seatbelt on, starting the engine up. But everything that we do, just like mindful walking, paying attention to the sensory experience. And then once we start driving, paying attention to the road, obviously, paying attention to not the phone, but paying attention to how we are reacting to, say, getting behind a school bus when we're in a hurry, and just noticing that we're so often in a rush when we're in the car and we're trying to get our stuff done, or trying to take our families around, our kids or whatever we're trying to get done, and we get kind of really triggered and stressed out by that, right? So slowing down a little bit, being aware of those triggers, being aware of oh, I can just really stop and take a breath and feel the weight of my body in the chair, and feel my feet against the gas pedal, and just being grounded, right? So try this. This is really a lot of people say that they find if you have a commute. I don't commute as much as I used to, but I still do this because I really established a habit of mindful driving. So try it. The transition ritual at the end of the workday is simply something that you can do when you finish work that signifies my work is done and I'm going to move on to my other priorities, whatever they are, because most of us have lots of other priorities after the workday. So a transition ritual may be changing out of your work clothes, or it might be listening to a particular song, or it might be if you're in a car commuting and you cross a certain bridge or something like that. You come up with something for you that reminds you, okay, this is the time to leave the stress of the workday behind and just focus on what I'm doing right now. Try not to, rehash and think through, because that's of course going, rewinding the past. Maybe try not to, even if things went, if it was a stressful day, try not to go into all that. Just try to be present. Maybe you're driving at that point. Maybe just really, again, pay attention to the act of driving. And it's still pretty beautiful out. So, maybe looking at the leaves, feeling the breeze, the sun, we could use some rain, but it's really gorgeous out. So tapping into that as well, that might be a transition ritual. Now, there are also mindful pauses. A lot of the brief pauses that we've done, like the 3 breaths for a pause, the stop, and the 3-minute breathing space, are all things that you could do during the workday. So hopefully you're trying to do that. And so the 2-minute pause is simply just a really quick, you can use it for anything. It can be just simply breathing or feeling the body grounded, whatever you find helpful. But point being is that what's a brief 1 to 3 minute practice that you can do while you're waiting for something, while you have that transition from one meeting to the next, or one task to the next, or when you finish responding to an email, just taking a pause and doing some mindful activity. And then mindful meetings. Now, there are links for all of these, by the way. So mindful meetings can be simply paying attention to um, what we want to get across in a particular meeting, what our agenda is. Okay, so it is getting in touch with that. But what I think a lot of people do, I know what I do sometimes, is I begin to think so much about the meeting before I even get into it that I realize that I'm not really present. So think about what you want to get across, but then do some sort of brief practice before the meeting. Might be, again, some deep breathing or grounding, or how's the body. That 3 breaths for a pause is a good quick one. something to just say, okay, just going to focus on me here right now, and then go into the meeting. Some people have even found ways, if it's a smaller group or a close-knit group, that you can do this with, as you start the meeting, just take a moment to pause and breathe before you jump right into the agenda. So you might try that. And then mindful breaks. And that's, I've got a bunch of things on breaks. So here's some suggestions. The 5-4-3-2-1 grounding uses the 5 senses. So you could do this. I think the traditional way is you simply 5 things, just look around, 5 things that you can see. You can do this right now, 5 things right in front of you that you can see. So just identify 5 unique things and just acknowledge 5 different objects in front of you. They might be different colors, different shapes. Okay. And then 4 things that you feel. So there might be 4 things that you sense. Your feet on the floor, your body in the chair. If you're typing, your fingers on the keyboard, or whatever it is. Okay. And then 3 different things that you hear. So maybe there's not a lot going on in your background, but try to identify 3 sounds, 3 unique sounds, near and far. And then 2 things that you smell and 1 thing that you taste, or vice versa. And you can mix those up if you like. This could be a good practice while you're having a cup of coffee or having your lunch or something. So that's 5-4-3-2-1. Meditate on the go is, there is a link here which takes you to a little bit of instruction if you want to follow this when you get the slides. But the hand tracing is simply putting your hand up, spreading your fingers out, and tracing your fingers. So like with the other hand. So you can see this okay. But it's really easy. You just kind of breathe in as you come up. So breathing in and breathe out. Slowly going through, breathing in and breathing out, all the way over till you get to the other side. And what you notice is, including the thumb, so 5 fingers. Now you can go all the way back, but it's the breathing, slowing down the breath, but also that tactile sense of feeling as you trace your hand. That's kind of grounding. Also, feeling your feet is another simple, quick, really exploring that contact your feet make with the ground. So just feeling that sense of groundedness. Take a moment to feel what the feet feel like, just really tapping into that. I do have an article on forest bathing, but it could be really anything that, as I mentioned, that connects you with nature. So when you do get outside, or even looking out the window, or even research shows that looking at photographs of nature can be helpful for this. So just taking a moment to get in touch with all the different, again, the sensory experience, the sounds of the forest, the scents, the vision, what you see, and maybe getting sort of a panoramic sense. What's above you? What's to your sides? What's behind you? What do you feel as you're walking, and maybe there's leaves underfoot? So you kind of get the idea. And it's just sort of immersing yourself and savoring that experience. Meditative Story is a podcast that I like and recommend. You might check it out. It's a brief story. It's a personal story by someone, usually about 15 minutes, 20 minutes long. So, but you can stop it and start it. But the meditative part is, so you listen to this very interesting story. It's kind of an immersive experience. But then the host pauses it at some point, usually in the middle, and does some sort of mindful prompt. And then at the end as well, a mindful prompt about, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? How did that story impact you? And then there's usually some sort of mindfulness activity that he does. So that's really, really kind of a nice one. good comment here for me. Sometimes it's watching a body of water, right? Taking in the view with deep breathing. So, right, you might have a particular special spot, peaceful place, or if it's, for you, if it might be a body of water, or for another, it might be being out in the forest, or whatever it is. Whatever, if it's working for you, continue doing that. Now, this link here is an older link from the New York Times. It's the Fresh Start 10-Day Challenge, but this actually has 10 different activities, and they're all mindful-based activities, and most of them are things that you can do quickly and easily. So you might check this out just to give you some further ideas about the variety of things. So I'm kind of giving you a lot, but I want you to sort of pick and choose. That's sort of be the homework this week, is pick and choose different activities that work for you that you can do quickly and easily during the workday. So the challenge is finding the time, and the challenge is remembering to do it, right? I think that's what we're all discovering. It's finding the time in our busy schedule, but also remembering to inject these quick little practices. So again, it's helpful if we do it preemptively before we're depleted. So that's, I think, usually, I know for me, sometimes if I'm having one of those days, by the time I'm like completely spent and kind of feeling kind of burnt out, then I say, oh, let me do some stretching or some mindful breathing or whatever it is. But the trick here is to try to do that beforehand. So try blocking out a couple of breaks. 15 minutes is a lot, I realize, but for some people it's hard to take 15-minute breaks, although that does seem to be the sweet spot. If you can really get the time for 15 minutes for whatever you plan to do, hopefully it's some restorative activity or some mindful type of activity. But even if it's 2 5-minute breaks, but I think do more than one is the key. Maybe one in the morning, one in the afternoon. So, and it's critical to step away from your work or in some way disengage from that, really kind of, sometimes it's that intense work focus, so that you relax that focus and you give your mind a chance to rest. So maybe it's a mindful walk or a stretch or connecting with a coworker. And then when you do that, take a moment to note your energy when you return. And hopefully you feel a little bit more invigorated. So the question really is not whether breaks are worth taking. I think we all know that intuitively. But it's how can we better ensure that they actually take place? So I'll kind of, when we do our meditation in a few moments, I'll build that into that, okay? So now this is just food for thought. If I gave you a break right now, if I was your boss and said, I want you to take a break of 15 minutes, what would you do? So just look at this list here and just maybe answer the question to yourself. And there's no right or wrong. Maybe you've got this big project and you have to get right back to work because you do have, maybe that would actually make you feel better. But think it through. Maybe there's a couple of other things that you could do. Maybe it's whatever. Just look through this list and pick one. If you had 15 minutes right now, what would you do today with everything that's on your plate? Again, there's no real right or wrong answer, but I would hopefully you could say, well, maybe I could do something that's restorative, something that gives yourself a real break from your work. So we got a G here, so fine, good, excellent. You get an A. Find a quiet spot and do a mindful activity. But again, sometimes that's not really the right thing. Sometimes I know B, like working on my to-do list, if I feel more in control of what I have to do this afternoon, for example, that helps me feel a little bit more grounded and centered about what's important, what my priorities are, and especially checking those things off, that can feel really good, right? But if I'm stressed about it and overly anxious, then that's not going to be so helpful. Take a walk outside. Good. So that's always I think, a great option. So, and try not to think about work. Try to disengage, because sometimes we're walking outside, we're still reviewing all the work stuff that's going on. So see if you can try to disengage from that a little bit. So anyway, just kind of, that's the whole idea, is simply to be mindful about it and to think it through. So just some other self-care pauses. So things that might help you reinforce the habit. So before you hit send or save something, take a deep breath and then reread it from the receiver's point of view. Use a password that reminds you to be mindful. Breathe mindfully, like while you're logging in or waiting for the computer to boot up or get ready or whatever, or you're at the copier or something like that. And when you're waiting, notice your body. What's your posture like? Where's tension? Are your shoulders tense, or what's going on in the body? Feel that sense of groundedness and tune into your breathing. And then you might also try some reminders. I have reminders set up on my phone from a couple of mindfulness apps, and so I see them during the day. So that is a good reminder. So whatever that is, so that they often will have a reminder in there. So the idea is to just find these moments of compassion for ourselves, to take care of ourselves and be kind to ourselves. But then also to have empathy for others. And we'll talk a little bit about that before we end. Hopefully we'll have enough time, but I would like to do a meditation for today. So let's take a moment to sit comfortably. This meditation is going to sort of encompass a few things that we've learned already. This is the 5th week, believe it or not. So we have one more week. And then actually I am going to set up a 7th kind of booster session, okay? But it does go fast. So this meditation will cover a little bit of breath work, a little bit of tuning into the body, noticing thoughts, noticing emotions. But we're also going to start with what your intention was. Remember in the very beginning, I asked, what was your intention for signing up for this course? What did you hope to achieve or get out of the course? So let's just begin by finding that comfortable position. You can close your eyes if you like. Try to find a way to sit where you can be relaxed, but also alert. And the first step we'll do is just simply, what was that intention? Just reflect on, what do you hope? Maybe it's changed a little bit, but if it hasn't, what was that initial intention that you hope to get out of the course? And is it helpful? Is it working? Do you need to adjust it or add to it? Or just, how realistic was it? So just kind of remembering that intention as you started this class. And then the next step is we're going to just simply tune into the breathing. Just notice the breath as it is right here and now. And let's take a couple of deeper, longer breaths. So lengthening the inhale, filling the lungs, and then a long, slow exhale, emptying the lungs. You can exhale through the nose or the mouth, whatever is comfortable. But just really, as you exhale, let the body settle. So inhale, exhale, soften. And as you do that, tune into the body, scan the body quickly. Maybe you notice a little tension somewhere. See if you can breathe into that area. You can Bring the energy of the breath into that, and then release. Let the breath kind of wash through that and dissolve that tension. Let the body settle. Feel the weight of your body. Feel the body. Feel the whole weight of the body transfer down into where you're sitting, the weight of the body down all the way down to your feet. Let the body relax. And now notice thoughts. What thoughts are going through the mind? What's on your mind right now? What's popping up? Just be curious about the types of thoughts that are going on. And remember, don't engage with them. Just notice them coming and going. They're just simply mental events. See if you can step back from them a little bit so that you can just observe thoughts that are present right now. And maybe there's something related to a stressful or an emotional situation. So if it triggers something, again, just notice, try not to get caught up in it. Remember, we don't have to fix anything right now, but just notice maybe there is an emotional response. We notice an emotion or a mixture of emotions coming up that you're more aware of. So again, just be aware of it, acknowledge it. And if it is a little triggering, sometimes maybe it is related to something that's sort of intense or something stressful. You can always come back to the body as an anchor or the breath. The body and the breath are always here. So maybe feeling the body, feeling the breath, take a couple more deep breaths. And then again, just notice. And for a last step of the exercise, I'm just going to ask you to reflect on what is working for you right now in these practices. Is there a particular time of day or a particular type of practice that you like or seems to work better for you? And then maybe just picking one or two of the things we reviewed today, a short practice that you could do. And when could you do a short practice during the workday? Could you take a break in the afternoon, even if it's a brief 3 to 5 minute break, to try mindful practice, whatever it is? See if you can just make that intention to say, I'm going to stop in between my meetings this afternoon or whatever you've got to do, and take 5 minutes for myself and do this breathing or take a walk or whatever it might be. Try to identify something that you might do later. And then try to keep it going. What's something that you can do that you can keep going tomorrow? Again, a practice in the morning, a practice in the afternoon, so that you're beginning to build a practice and a habit of these brief practices. Remember to be kind to yourself. That's really what it's a lot about, right? Remember to be kind to yourself. Take care of yourself. And maybe taking one last deep breath before we finish. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Maybe move a little bit, stretch a little bit. And that's our practice for today. So I'm going to move on, but I would love to know if you want to share at all. We covered a lot there, but share in the chat what you found helpful, or maybe share what you intend to do going forward. Let me know. Let me see it, but I'm going to move forward with the slides because I do want to finish by, we have only about 7 minutes left. So in 7 minutes, I'm going to cover the art of listening. So listening mindfully. If I had us all in a room, what I would do is I would ask you to pair up, and you can try this with somebody else. I would ask you to pair up. You could try it with a coworker or with a friend or a family member. And for 2 minutes, I want one of you to talk and the other person to listen. And when you're listening, you can't interrupt. All you can do is listen. Now you can active listening, so you can use body language and facial expressions and let the person know that you're listening, non-verbal, that non-verbal body language. But I don't want you to interrupt. I want you to just listen. And when you're talking, you can talk about anything. You talk about what you did over the weekend, or what you're going to do later today, or some fun activity you're going to do with the family, something like that. It could be anything, right? But just for 2 minutes, and then switch roles and see what that's like. And just notice what that's like to be listened to, and then notice what it's like to really listen. And what people usually realize is that when we're listening, we're usually also reviewing what we want to say, what our agenda is, what we want to interject. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's the awareness of really listening to what that person is saying, and really listening kind of like between the lines. And you can use active listening, such as reflecting back what you've heard. So at the end, you could say, I think I heard you say, and then reflect back what you heard. And the person is either going to say, yes, yes, exactly. Or they might say, well, no, I might really meant this or that. You can also reflect back, if it's, has any emotion to it, what the feeling part of it was, the emotional content of what that person is trying to get across. And that's another part of active and pure listening. So just realizing, our words really do have a lot of power. And, I said in the beginning that the Buddha's kind of rules, in a sense, but it basically comes down to, the basic rules are to say what is true and that which is helpful or kind. So if that's something that you can do, maybe you make that intention in your mindful communications. Now, there are a couple of links here. I'd hope to show the one on deep listening by Frank Ostaseski, but I don't think we really have time. But I would encourage you to listen to one or both of these. They're both, the Tara Brach one is excellent too. It's longer, but even the 5 minute, between the 5.5 minute part and the 10.5 minute. But the Frank Ostaseski deep listening, he talks about training nurses to listen with their head and their heart and their body. So when you think about it, that's really, really listening mindfully. So listening to the content of what you're hearing, the thought, the cognitive part of it, listening to the heart, the feeling part of it, but also listening with your body, and how, when you're listening, what's going on, and you're paying attention to what's going on in the body. So it really brings the three of them together. And he says it much better. It's a really quick video, but I think it's quite good. So you might check that out. There are other videos.
I'll be done in 3 minutes.
We're talking about a lot. We all have a lot of video, rather multitasking that we do. Good. I see a couple of you put what you can try later. Thank you. These are good. This is a good short video on multitasking, 5 ways to be mindful at work, energizing breathing. Sometimes we feel kind of sluggish and tired. This is a pretty fun little minute-and-a-half exercise on breathing to energize us. So you might try those as well. Okay, another good suggestion here. So good. Helpful to take a quick break after each visit. I do home visits instead of rushing to the next one. Yes, exactly. That's the idea. It helps me close mindfully the interaction and start the new visit with a clean slate. Yeah, I love that. So even if your work is a little bit more fast paced, um, I've heard of people talking about like when they move, like if you're going into a patient's room, and even just the act of putting your hand on the doorknob and opening the door, that can be a brief pause that signifies leave behind what you just did, but maybe whatever that was, and then move on to this next patient, this next task, this whatever it is. All right. So yes, that's the idea of it. So daily practices for the formal practices, you can choose really anything that we've done so far. As I said, what works for you? What do you like? Might be the body scan or sitting breath meditation or movement. Any one of those. Just pick one. You might mix them up during the week, so try different ones and do your best to integrate them into your workday. Okay, so try to really find times during the day when you can do them. And then the informal practices as well, the ones we talked about today, the either mindful driving or pauses. Remember the 3-minute breathing space, mindful meetings, getting yourself ready for that. When I send out the log sheet, I don't know if any of you are using the log sheets, but they can be very helpful. So you might use the communication piece, noticing when you do communicate, how that was, if there was, that kind of like we talked about. And then I'm going to send the mindfulness plan, and I want you to start thinking about what are you going to do. So what is your plan going forward? Because like I said, next week will be the last formal week of the 6-week class, although I will have a 7th. We'll probably do that about a month later. But what will you'll see, it's just a simple little chart, and you're going to just write down what formal practices and what informal practice you're going to do and when and where. Just so you kind of have a written plan going forward. So there are a bunch of links here that these will all take you to the mindfulness page, which has all of these. And then finally, this quote, which is, don't think of the purpose of meditation is that it's to go deep into consciousness. Yes, by the way, it can help to do that. And that it's going to wrap a blanket around yourself and say, oh, how cozy. I'm going to curl up in here all by myself, let the world burn. Not at all. We go deep into meditation so that we can reach out further and further to the world outside. And we can also use it to have that insight to know what action do you want to take? What mindful, helpful action do you want to take? Or connection maybe you want to take with a person. Now, I realize we didn't talk that much about mindful connection. We'll talk a little bit more about that next week. So we will do that. There are a couple of more links here that you might check out on videos. And then I am going to send you mindfulness at work tips, a couple of handouts there. So you're going to get a few attachments when I send these out to you. Hopefully later today. If not, it'll probably be tomorrow morning. All right. So all of this hopefully will help take the weight off your mind with this kind of cute little character. But I'll just stop it here and we'll stop the recording. But first, let me say thanks again for joining me today. And once I stop sharing, I'll be on for a couple minutes if you have any questions. So if you have a good mindful week, trying the practices,